You'll never be useful to us, my mom said, while praising my golden sister. So I became the password to all of the files. Now the buyer won't release a single order without my signature. Hey Reddit, throw away because my family treats the internet like a surveillance hobby. I, 26 male, professional broom-turned-ops guy in my parents' family business, which is code for they strategize, I chase trucks. Mom and dad love hierarchy the way toddlers love sugar. I grew up as closed sign kid. Every Thursday since I was 12, I flipped the placard at Walt's bookstore while Dad and Walt hosted Salon Night. Politics in the back, gum wrappers in the front. Guess which was my department? Starring opposite me is my golden sister Claire, 28 female. Claire reads at 4, debates at 10, collects degrees like Pokemon, and somehow gets 2 weddings while my fiancé is told 1 simple dress. In family lore, Claire is the face. Me? I'm access. As in, the key card, not the portrait. I'm engaged, underfunded, and allegedly not cut out for international travel, which is hilarious because I can navigate a dockyard blindfolded. I'm also the person who recently opened a file in Dad's desk labeled Estate Draft and learned I'm a beneficiary conditional on performance, which is HR speak for intern to your own inheritance. Anyway, this all comes to a head around my rehearsal dinner. The group chat gets renamed Welcome Home Claire for my event. Mom announces within earshot that I'm just access, and my best friend Jordan suggests I stop being the broom and become the lock. That's the night the plot flips. Here's how closed sign kid turned into the gate everyone has to pay to pass through. When I was 12, my parents gave me an official job title, closed sign kid. Every Thursday night, Dad dragged Claire to Walt's bookstore for Salon Night. Sounds fancy, right? It was Dad, Claire, and Walt in the back, talking politics and economics, while I flipped the wooden placard from open to closed and swept up gum wrappers. Claire got debate practice. I got a broom. That pretty much set the tone for the rest of my life. Claire always had the golden ticket. Dad called her brilliant before she could spell it. At 4, she was reading books Walt kept behind the counter. By middle school, she was the star pupil, already sitting in on grown-up talks. I sat on a milk crate up front, making sure no one snuck in during their big think tank. Walt once joked I was operations. He wasn't wrong. High school didn't change anything. Claire got flown out to debate camps, and I got keep gas receipts when I asked for help with the car. Dad said not everyone's cut out for international travel when I hinted at a semester abroad. Translation: Claire gets Paris. I get the warehouse shift. She came back with stories about professors and markets. I came back with a pallet jack license. College years? Same. Claire's master's, then her PhD. Every graduation had family flights, hotel stays, photos in caps and gowns. My graduation gift was a payment schedule. I found the binder one summer. Her tab had gift checked every time. My tab had loan with a little percentage column. It was the kind of thing accountants enjoy and siblings don't. Then came weddings. Claire got 2. One in Europe, one here. Both covered top to bottom by my parents. I wasn't allowed a +1 to the intimate ceremony overseas. There were 50 people there, so apparently 50 is intimate if you're Claire. When it came to my wedding planning, Mom looked at my fiancé and said, 1 simple dress, nothing over the top, 2 weddings for Claire, 1 discount dress for us. Math checks out. When I joined the family business full-time, I figured maybe I'd finally get a seat at the table. Wrong. Dad, Claire, and sometimes Ethan, her husband, made strategy decisions. I got the leftovers. If a shipment was late, I handled it. If a carrier needed chasing, I chased. My notes got forwarded into the secret thread, and Claire replied, "Good catch," with a thumbs up emoji. Nothing like seeing your own work recycled back to you with her name attached. Enter Jordan. He's been my friend since high school. Jordan has 2 hobbies, sarcasm and making everything sound obvious. After hearing about the bookstore nights, he called me the family surge protector. All the bad power goes through you so the nice electronics don't fry. He wasn't wrong. He came with me once, stood outside while Claire and Dad had their salon, and said, "They'll let you in when they run out of chairs." Spoiler, still waiting. This all simmered until one boring Tuesday, when I went digging through Dad's office for a contract. The drawer stuck, a folder slipped out, and suddenly I was holding a manila file labeled Estate Draft. Inside, Claire, trustee, Claire, executor, Claire, full heir. Me, beneficiary conditional on performance of duties. Conditional. Like I was on probation in my own family. Claire got paragraphs. I got an asterisk. I took pictures and texted Jordan. He replied in 30 seconds. "Congrats. You're DLC. Pay extra to unlock you." 5 minutes later, frame it. Modern Parenting, first edition. 10 minutes after that, he showed up at my place with burgers. We sat there while he read the draft out loud in a fake lawyer voice. Every time he hit Claire's name, he bowed. When he hit mine, he coughed and said, "Terms may apply." I wasn't even mad. He was saying what the paper already said. He circled the word conditional with a red pen and wrote, "He's not an intern" in the margin. Then he got serious. "They keep calling you the access of this family," he said. "Fine, be the gate. If everything runs through you, then you set the toll. Stop being the broom. Be the lock." He opened his laptop, registered a boring company name, and made a spreadsheet. Vendors who hated late deliveries, ones who always asked about compliance, ones who wanted emails they could forward without edits. 3 vendors was all we needed, he said. Get 3 and the rest will follow. That night we built a template scope, left the prices blank, and set me as the point of contact. Jordan called it an ops hub. I called it desperation. He didn't care. He typed faster than I could complain. Before he left, he looked at the photos of the will draft again and said, "They think you're a footnote. Time to write your own page?" He printed the packet, slid it across the table, and told me to keep it close. The next day, Mom asked me to drive to Walt's to drop off flyers. Walt was at the counter, same old store, same lamp. He mentioned the lease was killing him. I nodded and said I'd bring him a brace for his broken table leg. On the way out, I glanced at the back room where Claire and Dad used to sit. Empty chairs. Just us now. Driving back, my phone buzzed. Jordan again. "Got a vendor ready for Tuesday. He hates late deliveries. He'll love you." I told him I'd fix Walt's table first. Jordan said, "Start where you swept, end where you set the agenda." Good symmetry. So yeah, that was the week closed sign kid, found out he was also conditional beneficiary kid. And maybe, if Jordan was right, future gatekeeper kid. One thing was certain. I wasn't flipping anyone else's sign anymore. A rehearsal dinner is supposed to be a practice run for your wedding. In my case, it turned into a welcome party for my sister. And not even in a subtle way. The family group chat literally got renamed from rehearsal dinner to welcome home Claire. No typo. No joke. Dad hit edit, wrote it out, and pressed save. Everyone responded with heart emojis like this was the most normal thing in the world. I asked in the chat if maybe it was a little weird since, the dinner was technically for me and my fiancé. Mom replied, "Don't be silly, of course you're included." Included. Like I was the kid brother who tagged along on a field trip. That was the vibe. Claire was the event, and I was the +1 to my own life. Then, the seating chart arrived. Claire's in-laws, people I'd barely exchanged 3 sentences with, had VIP placement at the head table right next to my parents. My fiancé and I? Exiled to the far corner next to a giant speaker. Perfect if you love listening to distorted microphone feedback instead of conversation. I asked why I was stuck in no man's land. Mom said, "It's important to honor Claire's family. Apparently my fiancé wasn't family yet. Good to know." The slideshow sealed it. My cousin leaked the file to me because she thought I deserved to see it before. 90% Claire, baby Claire, teen Claire, college Claire, Claire in graduation robes, Claire at her 2 weddings, Claire hugging Dad like she cured cancer. 2 slides had me. Both were group photos where I looked like I'd wandered into frame by accident. One was me at age 7, partially cropped out by a balloon. The other was a Christmas shot where Claire's face was sharp and mine looked like Bigfoot caught in motion. I pointed this out in the chat. Mom replied, "Don't be dramatic, you're in there." Like Waldo counts as representation. Then came brunch 2 days before the rehearsal. Mom leaned over to a cousin, and while I was standing 3 feet away said, "He's not the face of the family. He's just access. You'll never be useful to us." She didn't whisper, she didn't flinch. She said it like she was describing the weather. My cousin froze mid-bite, looked at me, and then stared at her eggs like they were the most interesting thing in the world. I didn't say anything. I just finished my coffee and left. Back at home, I told Jordan. He laughed so hard he almost dropped his fries. "Access," he repeated, wheezing. "Like a login screen? Like the free trial version of your own family? Imagine raising a kid for 26 years and deciding he's the key card at the door." He wasn't done. He pointed at the seating chart and said, "Congratulations, you're sitting closer to the bathroom than the buffet. You've officially been ranked below potato salad." That's Jordan for you. No sympathy, just sarcasm sharp enough to cut glass. And somehow, that's better. He showed up with his portable printer again and demanded the estate draft photos. He spread everything on my kitchen table like he was hosting a conspiracy board. The will draft with me listed as conditional, the slideshow printouts featuring Claire's highlight reel, and my exile to the speaker seating chart. He tapped each one with a pen like a judge passing sentence. "Okay," he said, "here's the deal. They've told you loud and clear you're not the star. You're not even an extra. You're the guy who sets up the chairs and then gets thanked in small print. So stop waiting for them to hand you a script. Write your own. I rolled my eyes. He wasn't finished. He grabbed a napkin, scrawled OPSHUB across the top in all caps, and underlined it twice like he was naming a band. He tightened the plan we'd already sketched. Tabbed vendor list, a template contract, numbers blank, mandatory routing through us, my name as point of contact. Meanwhile, Claire texted me saying her flight might be late, and could I shift the rehearsal schedule? Not asking, telling. She didn't even say thanks. She just assumed the whole event would move around her. I showed Jordan the text. He smirked. Perfect. You're the opening act. She's the headliner. You're basically the roadie at your own show. Later that night, Mom called to remind me of the toast order. Dad was first, then Claire's in-laws, then some cousin. My fiancée? Not listed. I asked where she fit in. Mom said, she'll have plenty of time at the wedding. Translation? Nowhere. I stared at the estate draft pinned to my wall, the slideshow still open on my computer, and the seating chart printout shoved under my keyboard. Add them together and you got one message. You're the spare tire, the surge protector, the closed sign kid who never got promoted. Jordan packed up, shoved the napkin with OPSHUB scrawled on it into my hand, and said, you've got two choices. Keep whining about the chair they gave you, or build the table and make them pay to sit at it. He clapped me on the back and left with the kind of grin people have when they know they've just set off fireworks in your brain. So yeah, my rehearsal dinner got hijacked into a Claire convention. I was corner table guy, listening to feedback from a speaker while Claire's in-laws toasted like they'd discovered America. But that was also the night Jordan put the blueprint in front of me. The night closed sign kid turned into gatekeeper in training. Jordan called it the human toll booth. His phrase, not mine. According to him, that's what I was about to become. Not the CEO, not the visionary, not the strategist, just the guy everyone had to pay to drive through. Which honestly sounded better than being the family surge protector or just access. At least toll booths make money. We started small, working from the tabbed spreadsheet we'd already built. The late fee types, the compliance warriors, the forward button crowd. His words. They don't care about family drama, he said. They care about not losing pallets and not getting fined for missing signatures. That's your lane now. The first vendor laughed at me. Actual laugh. I pitched the ops hub like it was a magic button for smoother orders, and he said, kid, I've heard this before. You'll vanish in 6 months. I walked out thinking maybe he was right. Jordan just shrugged. Every toll booth gets a few cars that try to drive around. Let him scrape his bumper. The second vendor wasn't laughing. He asked for specifics. Jordan had written half the answers already, so I sent him a PDF that looked suspiciously professional. Compliance timestamps, routing guarantees, escalation contacts, all the stuff Dad never bothered to promise. Vendor said he'd think about it. Jordan called that a win. He didn't hang up. That's progress. The third vendor actually signed. A pilot contract, nothing huge, but enough to get the first domino to tip. We printed the signed page, pinned it to my corkboard, and Jordan said, congratulations. You're officially charging tolls. He made me buy donuts for the office with the first check. While all this was happening, Ethan slid me some interesting bedtime reading, the buyer's supplier code. Ethan isn't loud, but he knows how the game works. Dad's been ignoring half of this, he said. No minutes, no proper disclosures, shadow boards with Claire in every seat. I skimmed the code and realized it was basically a ready-made trap. Every violation was something we'd been doing for years. I mapped each one line by line. Jordan called it my cheat sheet for family hypocrisy. We sent the packet to the buyer's compliance lead. Nothing dramatic, no rant, just a clean memo. Here's what's missing. Here's how we fix it. Here's the plan. A week later, the buyer paused all new POS until the remediation plan was signed, and added me as a required co-signer. Dad nearly blew a fuse when he read the email. I wasn't even CC'd on the rant he sent back, but Ethan forwarded it to me with a smiley face. The buyer's reply was even better. Please see attached policy page 7. Nothing like corporate bureaucracy to do your dirty work for you. Meanwhile, Claire was too busy being adored to notice. She flew in for some consulting, sat in on a meeting, and got credited for strategic insights that were literally bullet points I'd written. I didn't argue. I just highlighted more sections in the supplier code. Then came Walt. Poor guy admitted the lease on the bookstore was killing him. He looked 10 years older, like the shelves were draining him. I mentioned it to Jordan, and he immediately lit up. Perfect. Buy it. Flip the script. You used to sweep floors there, now you own the building. I told him we weren't billionaires. He said, Community LLC. Get a few people to pitch in. It's cheap PR and a perfect symbol. He wasn't wrong. Within a month, the papers were signed. Walt kept his job, I got the deed, and we rebranded as the Stacks, monthly forums on ethics and succession. Of course, my parents didn't love it. They showed up late, hovered in the back, and tried to steer questions. Nobody cared. The crowd was too busy asking about governance. I didn't call anyone out. I just laid out simple rules. Minutes, disclosures, shared decision-making. Stuff a freshman business major could tell you. People clapped. Dad sulked. Jordan grinned like a proud parent. The next morning at brunch, Mom tried again with the just access line. Jordan didn't even let her finish. He said, yeah, like Wi-Fi. Without him, you're offline. She didn't laugh. He did. And then the buyer scheduled a formal compliance summit. They put my gap map on the agenda with my name in the header. No secret chats, no conditional footnotes. Just me, right there, listed as the co-signer for the entire remediation plan. So there it was. One pilot contract, one annoyed dad, one exhausted Walt, one rebranded bookstore, and a buyer who suddenly acted like I was the adult in the room. Closed sign. Kid had turned into the human toll booth, and every car had to drive through me. Jordan summed it up best. They spent 20 years treating you like a spare tire. Now you're the only bridge. Hope they brought change for the toll. And if you told 12-year-old me that one day I'd own Walt's bookstore, I would have laughed, coughed up dust from the mop bucket, and gone back to scraping gum off the entryway. Yet here I was, signing papers that basically said, congratulations, you no longer sweep the floor, you pay for it. Walt wasn't hiding how bad things were. He told me rent was eating him alive. Like every month was a choice between keeping the lights on or replacing the coffee machine that sounded like it had tuberculosis. He said he'd probably have to close. Jordan, standing behind me like an overexcited realtor, just grinned and said, we'll take it. I nearly choked. We? Yeah, Jordan said. Community LLC. Cheap. Perfect optics. You were the broom boy, now you're the landlord. Poetic symmetry. Walt looked relieved, like someone had just offered him a seatbelt on a crashing plane. Papers were drawn, signatures were made, and suddenly I had a building deed with my name on it. Closed sign. Kid had become building owner Kid. We'd already rebranded. We're not calling it Waltz anymore. It's too soft. We need something edgy but intellectual. Like, the Stacks. He wrote it in all caps on a whiteboard, underlined it 3 times, and then sat back like he'd just solved world hunger. We plastered flyers around town. The Stacks. Monthly forums on business ethics and succession. Jordan insisted on adding open bar of ideas as a tagline. Walt said it sounded dumb, but Jordan wouldn't let it go. The first night, I expected maybe 6 bored people and one guy who thought he was signing up for a chess club. Instead, the place was packed. Folding chairs everywhere, aisles clogged. Even the fire exit had someone leaning against it. Apparently, people love watching someone drag their family through the mud without actually naming names. Ethan kicked it off with a talk called Clean Handoffs in Messy Families. Are subtle enough that my parents couldn't storm out. Sharp enough that half the room started nodding like bobbleheads. I moderated, mostly just pointing to people and making sure Jordan didn't take the mic to do stand-up about my family. Walt hovered near the coffee machine, which still coughed every 10 minutes, but now he smiled when it did. Questions came fast. What do you do if board meetings aren't documented? How do you avoid conflicts of interest when one kid does all the work? I didn't need to say my sister's name. Everyone already knew. I answered simply, minutes, disclosures, shared decision-making. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. Applause. Actual applause. Dad had never clapped for me in his life, but a room full of strangers did. Of course, my parents showed up. Late. They hovered at the back like undercover cops. Mom whispered to someone about how proud she was that I'd finally found an outlet. Dad tried to ask a question about respecting hierarchy, and the moderator politely redirected to another topic. Nobody cared about his hierarchy speech. The crowd was there for process, not nostalgia. Claire skipped it, probably sensing the whole event was a passive-aggressive TED Talk aimed at her. Ethan, though, was front row, grinning like he'd waited years to watch someone else say what he couldn't. The press turned it into a headline the next morning. Black Sheep buys family shrine, turns it into town forum. They even used a picture of me holding the mic with Walt in the background. Dad's face was cropped out. I framed it. Jordan was unbearable afterward. You crushed it, he said. The Broom Boy moderates civic debate. You've officially evolved into gatekeeper. He bought a stack of flyers and handed them out at the office like business cards. Mom tried to tell him to tone it down. He said, sorry, can't hear you. I'm too busy forwarding tonight's applause. The fallout was immediate. A buyer's compliance officer had attended quietly in the back. Next morning, they emailed us asking for a full compliance summit, attaching my gap map as the primary agenda item. That meant every missing minute, every shadow decision, every Claire-centric board note was now Exhibit A. I wasn't just the gate. I was the guy running the toll booth and charging interest. My parents hated it. They muttered about disloyalty and airing family laundry. I reminded them the forums weren't about family, they were about ethics. If the shoe fit, that wasn't my fault. Jordan summed it up better. If the house squeaks when you talk about leaks, maybe fix the pipes. Meanwhile, the stacks became the place to be. Vendors who used to groan about invoices now came to hear Ethan talk about governance. Local students showed up to ask questions. One guy tried to pitch his startup. Walt rolled his eyes but took his money for a shelf rental anyway. At the next brunch, Mom tried the access label again. I didn't bite. Everyone remembered the Wi-Fi line from last time. So there I was. The same kid who used to sweep the front of Walt's store, now running public forums in the same building, with strangers clapping for simple answers like, write things down. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't world-changing, but it was mine. The Buyers Compliance Summit was on the calendar. My name was listed as co-signer. And for the first time in my life, Dad couldn't uninvite me. Jordan leaned over my shoulder, saw the email and said, "Congrats, toll booth. Next stop, charging late fees." The Buyers Compliance Summit was the first time in my entire life where my presence wasn't optional. Usually, my family holds important meetings without me, and then loops me in afterward with an email full of bullet points that translate to, do all the grunt work, don't ask questions. This time, the buyer themselves sent the invite. They didn't just want me in the room, they printed my name in bold on the agenda as a required co-signer. Without my scribble at the bottom, nothing moved. Suddenly, the kid who used to sweep floors at Walt's store was the guy with the only working key. We showed up at the buyer's headquarters. Imagine the most boring corporate setting possible. White walls, table so shiny you could see your pores, water pitchers that nobody touched because everyone was too nervous to pee mid-meeting. The compliance lead walked in like she was auditioning for the role of policy enforcer in a dystopian movie. She opened a laptop, flicked on the projector, and the whole room went quiet except for the hum of the fan. First slide, minutes, absent. She said it flat, no emotion. You can't prove decisions were made because you never wrote them down. Dad tried to jump in with his usual, with all due respect voice. The same one he's used to bulldoze through employees for decades. She didn't even look up. Page 4 of the supplier code. Documentation required. Next. Second slide. Shadow board. Non-compliant. She read the definition out loud. Meetings with only select family members. No transparency, no records. She didn't need to say names. Everyone in the room knew exactly what that meant. Dad and Claire holding their secret club while the rest of us played delivery boy. Dad tried to argue again, but she was already on the next slide. Third slide. Trustee designation. Conflicted. The compliance lead raised an eyebrow, said, "Consolidation of authority creates unacceptable risk," and clicked to the next slide like she was swatting a fly. To them, succession isn't a family drama. It's a supply continuity risk. Jordan was sitting next to me like an uninvited comedian with a front row ticket. He leaned over and whispered, "Translation. Congrats. You're not only screwed at home, you're now officially a case study in bad governance." He was doodling on a notepad the whole time. First a tombstone that read, "Shadowboard RIP," then a traffic cone with my name on it. When the compliance lead said nothing could move without my co-signature, he shoved the doodle toward me and whispered, "That's you. The toll gate. Nothing passes unless you wave." Slide 4 was the big one. Remediation plan. Required. Must be co-signed by me. Purchase orders remain paused until confirmation received. That's when Dad's face turned the shade of ketchup left out in the sun too long. He tried to go on a rant about hierarchy and respecting decades of leadership. The compliance lead just said, 30 years is irrelevant. Compliance is mandatory. Watching my dad get stonewalled by a woman with a slideshow was better than any graduation or wedding I'd ever been to. The whole meeting took 45 minutes. That's it. 45 minutes to undo 30 years of Dad knows best. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to fight with Claire. I didn't have to beg for recognition. My name was on the report. My signature was required. And the buyer didn't care about family politics. They cared about policy. Dad stormed out, muttering like a man who just realized the rules of the game changed and no one told him. Mom trailed behind, clutching her purse like compliance violations might jump out and bite her. Claire stayed behind for a second, gave me a look and asked, "These are the same fixes you offered before, right?" I said yes. She didn't thank me. She just left. Typical. Jordan stayed. He tapped the projector screen with his pen and said, "Congratulations. You just won a fight you didn't even show up to. They quoted your homework while your dad failed the class. Seriously, you should have brought a Burger King crown." By the end of the week, the seasonal launch was toast. Vendors stayed in my lane, and orders were still frozen until my co-signature. Dad tried bluffing that he'd find new buyers. Jordan laughed for 10 straight minutes and said, "Sure, go sell your non-compliant goods to who? A lemonade stand?" Claire tried playing diplomat. "Dad, just sign the plan. This isn't worth risking the entire buyer relationship." He kept going on about principle. Principle doesn't move inventory. But hey, at least he had his pride while pallets sat around collecting dust. Meanwhile, life at the Stacks was the exact opposite. Our second forum pulled an even bigger crowd. People jammed into the aisles, folding chairs creaked under the weight, and Walt ran out of coffee cups by the first break. Ethan gave a talk titled, "Transparency is Cheaper Than Nepotism," and half the room nodded so hard I thought we'd have a chiropractor shortage. I moderated again, and random strangers actually asked me questions like I was some kind of expert. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to sweep gum off that exact floor, and now I was standing there telling people how to avoid becoming the cautionary tale I grew up in. And just to rub salt in the wound, the buyer sent a follow-up email the next morning. Subject line, "Remediation Plan." Signature reminder. Her bolded text, "Required co-signatory, me." Not Dad, not Claire, me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence said it all. Jordan read the email over my shoulder and cracked up. "They spent your whole life calling you Just Access. Now you're the password. Hope they remembered to write it down because without you, they're locked out." He smirked, leaned back in his chair and added, "Honestly, I think you should print business cards that just say, 'Insert password to proceed.'" So no, the Compliance Summit wasn't a Hollywood drama. Nobody flipped a table, nobody screamed about betrayal, nobody stormed off in tears. It was better. It was boring, bureaucratic, and effective. My dad finally got treated the way he always treated me. Irrelevant when the rules were already written. And the best part? I didn't even have to argue. I just sat there, let the buyer run through the slides, and enjoyed watching the system do all the work for me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the broom kid, the spare tire, or the asterisk in someone else's plan. I was the toll booth and the password. Nothing was moving without me. I didn't announce I was cutting my parents off. No speech, no, "I'm done," no dramatic exit. I just stopped showing up. Calls went unanswered, texts sat unread. The family group chat became a muted museum of Claire updates. My mom would post things like, "Claire's flight landed," or "Claire's lecture went so well," and where they used to expect my fake smiley face reaction, they got nothing. Silence. Jordan said it was the most peace and quiet I'd ever had. "Look," he said, holding up his own phone. "Not a single ping about Claire's bowel movements in a week. You're free." Meanwhile, my life moved in the opposite direction. The Ops Hub was no longer some experimental spreadsheet. Vendors started bragging about their smooth lane. One of them told another vendor, "Just run it through him. You'll get your stuff on time." That turned into more contracts landing on my desk without me even chasing them. Jordan taped each signed page to my wall like a sports fan, collecting posters. By the time I had 5 in a row, he crossed the top in red marker and wrote, "Hall of Fame, people who actually like you." The stacks kept getting busier. You couldn't walk in without hearing 3 conversations at once. One about bookkeeping, one about governance, and one guy in the corner ranting about how his brother stole his trucking company. Ethan's talks were the highlight. He did one called, "Succession Isn't a Personality Contest," that had people clapping mid-sentence. Walt shuffled around refilling coffee like he was 20 again. The local paper ran another piece with a photo of me standing on stage, mic in hand. I sent Jordan the link and he replied, "Wow, Broom Boy turned keynote speaker. Disney Arc unlocked." Meanwhile, back at headquarters, the seasonal launch sat in the warehouse like a bloated whale. Orders were still frozen. Dad kept repeating the word principle, like it was a magic spell that would make compliance disappear. Mom kept throwing around family loyalty, as if the buyer gave discounts for it. Claire didn't say much at all, which was honestly the smartest thing she'd done in months. Then came the texts. At first, polite. "We should talk. It's important." I let them sit. Then they escalated. "After everything we've done for you, you're letting outsiders ruin us? Don't throw away your family." Still nothing from me. Finally, desperation kicked in. "We can't fix this without you. You're ruining the business. Please come back." Jordan read them aloud in a fake dramatic voice and clutched his chest like he was reading Shakespeare. "Please, noble son, save us. We who once called you potato salad now need your dressing." They tried new tactics too. One afternoon at the Stacks, Mom and Dad showed up, standing stiff in the back row like mall cops. When the forum ended, they shuffled forward with smiles so fake I could practically hear the squeak of plastic. "We're so proud of what you've built," Mom said. Dad added, "The family needs you now more than ever." I pointed at the folding chairs still scattered around from the event and said, "Grab one, you're just attendees like everyone else." Then I walked out. The crowd clapped. My parents stood there like mannequins someone forgot to move. A week later, Ethan pulled me aside. "Your dad asked me to convince you to come back." I told him to handle his own mess. He shrugged. They made their choices. Do what you think is right. That was the closest thing to family support I'd ever heard, and it didn't even come from my own parents. The buyer didn't slow down. They sent a fresh routing oversight services agreement addressed to my company with me as signatory, compliance clauses, co-signature authority, and order release controls. When I showed Jordan, he nearly fell off his chair. Direct contract? Congratulations, you've been officially promoted from spare tire to entire engine. At that point, the family business was gasping for air. Vendors refused to deal with them unless I was on the thread. The buyer wouldn't release orders without my sign-off. The Stacks was pulling in more local buzz than any of their staged anniversary galas. And through it all, my parents kept pretending it was just a temporary phase. Then came the letter. Handwritten. Dad's slanted script across an envelope that showed up at my apartment. Inside, a whole essay about family unity, legacy, loyalty. Near the bottom, "We can't fix this without you." I stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a traffic cone. Jordan saw it and said, "That's perfect. Every time you get milk, you're reminded they need your password." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who once called me Just Access were now camped outside the gate begging for the code. The kid who wasn't allowed to bring a +1 to his sister's wedding was now the only +1 that mattered to the buyer. The broom boy who used to close up Walt's shop was now the landlord running town forums. I didn't yell at them. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a dramatic showdown. I just lived my life, signed my contracts, filled my calendar with Stacks events, and let them stew in their silence. Every ignored call, every unanswered text, every unreturned email was payback without me lifting a finger. And when they finally realized they couldn't fix it without me, I didn't budge. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because the truth was too obvious. I didn't need them anymore. They needed me. Jordan summed it up while we were sitting in the Stacks one night, eating takeout surrounded by flyers. He pointed at the fridge where Dad's letter was hanging under the cone magnet and said, "You know what's funny? They thought you were a spare part. Turns out you were the whole engine. Now they're begging the engine to come back, and the engine doesn't even feel like driving them anywhere." And I raised my soda, nodded, and said, "Good thing they still have Claire." YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.